Good morning, church. I hope you all are having a great day. As was announced, Brody is gone, so I am here to bring you the good word. So, as this slide says, the problems of sin and sorrow is what I will be covering today. So, in late 2022-ish, my family had kind of gone through a little bit of a rough time. One of my aunts had been diagnosed with some kind of eye illness, cancer. My older sister, she had been diagnosed with liver cancer. That looked pretty bad. And then also just a couple weeks before me and Laura's second wedding anniversary, we had a miscarriage at about 11 weeks. And so, as I kind of dealt with this sorrow, this sadness, this trouble, it kind of allowed me to see others' sorrow, how they responded to tragedy. And what I saw was kind of concerning. Many people, they blamed God. They called him unjust. They called him unloving. And so this last year, I got to get into study and really learn about the book of Job, which deals a lot with this topic of how do we deal with sorrow? What does it mean when we deal with tragedy? For those of you unfamiliar with the book of Job, Job is a righteous man. He is good in the eyes of God, and he is also well regarded in his community. He sits at the gate of the city, and people ask him for knowledge and wisdom. They come to them with their troubles. He has vast amount of wealth. He has herds and all these servants to take care of them. And he is well regarded. And then one day, Satan comes with the other angels to present himself to God. And God says to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And Satan says, "Well, yes, I have, but you won't let me touch him. You won't let me afflict him. Take everything he has from him, God, and he will turn his back on you." So God says, "He is yours to take away his stuff, but do not touch the man." And so Satan does this. And all of Job's possessions, his vast herds, his wealth, his servants, his 10 children, 3 daughters and 7 sons, all in a single day. And then Job does not sin against God. So Satan comes to before God another day. And God says to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And Satan says, "Yes, I've taken away his stuff, but if you afflict his flesh, he will curse you." So God says, "You may afflict his flesh, but do not kill him." So Satan goes and afflicts Job with severe boils from the bottoms of his feet to the tops of his head. And he is outcast from society. He is thrown down from his seat of honor. And he lives in the dumps and is ridiculed, considered the lowest of the low. He gains no rest during the day because of all the pain. And he gains no rest at night because he is tormented with terrors. And so, his 3 friends, the 3 friends of Job, come to him, and they see him, and they are so distraught with how afflicted he is that they tear their clothes, put dust on their head, and they weep with him in silence for 7 days. Then they start having a conversation with him, and it's a bit of a rough one. It's not maybe so friendly as you would like to think. But ultimately, Job is restored at the end of the book and comes back into fullness. So, back to that topic with his 3 friends. They and Job are under this understanding that God blesses those who are righteous, and he punishes those who are wicked. So therefore, why is Job suffering? Is Job wicked, or is Job still righteous? Now, this may not necessarily apply to you guys as closely as it would to Job. Think of it today like when someone who is young dies in a car crash, or a family is hit by a drunk driver and dies, but maybe the drunk driver lives. Maybe that person who you don't really like at work slanders you and they get a promotion and you don't. What about your loved one that dies at a young age of cancer, but then you have the drug addict, you have the person who does all kinds of things that lives off the government and doesn't work, and yet gets to live to be 80 and die in hospice and rest? This is the question that I pose to you today. Why does good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people? So when we ask this question, there's part of us that recognizes we're not the ones in control. We can't change the outcome of what happens to who. Otherwise, surely we would just give good things to good people and we would punish bad people. So if it's not us, who is in control then? Is it your friend? Is it your neighbor? Is it your state government? How about your country's government? They can't really save any good person from bad things happening from them, and they can't punish every evildoer, otherwise they would. So who then is in control? Well, let's look at what Job says and his friends. If we go to Job chapter 1, verse 20, we'll see his response after having been afflicted with the loss of all of his possessions. At this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground and worshipped and said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised." In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. What about after his flesh is afflicted, after his health is taken away? Job 2, 9 through 10. His wife said to him, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die." He replied, "You are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" Throughout Job's conversations with his friends, they always acknowledge God as the one in control. He is the one with power, and he is the one in authority. So, naturally, our question becomes this: why does God allow good things to happen to bad people and bad things to happen to good people? So, if we recognize God is the one in charge, now we have to ask, who is good people and who is bad people? Who decides who is good and who is bad? Naturally, I think a lot of us are going to say, if we humble ourselves, we're the one that get to decide who is good and who is bad. We look at ourselves and we say, this other person over here, they stole from work, but I don't steal. I maybe goof off a little bit, but I don't steal actually from my work. Or, maybe, someone else who does drugs and alcohol. They're like, well, I don't do drugs and alcohol. I'm better than them. I'm a good person. It's easy to compare ourselves to others, but it's much harder when we look at the standard of the one who's in charge. Because ultimately, if we're not the ones in charge, we're also not the ones who get to determine what the standard of good and bad people are. So, if we look at Romans 3, 9 and through 12, we'll see what God has to say on who is good and who is bad. What shall we conclude then? Do we have any advantage? Not at all. We have already made the charge that Jews and Gentiles alike are all under the power of sin. As it is written, there is no one righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands. There is no one who seeks God. All have turned away. They have altogether become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. As he'll say in verse 23, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Oh man, we're all bad. There is no one who is good. We are all sinful. So, it's pretty easy to look at people out there and say, you know what, they're sleeping in on Sunday. They're bad. Your loved ones, a little bit harder to look at them and be like, you know what, you're bad. You're wicked. Maybe even harder still to look in the mirror and say, you're wicked. You're sinful. You are evil. You are not good. And so, if no one is good and all are bad, we have to look at this distinction of, well, I'm still not being blessed. I'm being punished, but those other people, they're still blessed. So our question, comes, why does God allow good things to happen to others, but bad things to me, or my people, the people I care about? So, let's look at this. What is justness? Does God act justly when he differentiates between those who are not us and those who are us? What does it mean? Is God right? Well, it may not surprise you if the last answer that I kind of came to was not something super settling, but this one may also not be super settling. You're not treated nearly as badly as you think you deserve. You should be punished far worse. I mean, look in America. We have so many blessings. We have heat, we have cooling, we have food, we have clothes, we have water. If you want to go somewhere, you can go somewhere. You are extremely blessed in this country. And you are blessed far more than you deserve. What is it that you deserve then, if God is the one in charge, and he has determined you to be sinful and wicked, but has blessed you? Well, in Romans 6:23, he says, you deserve death, for that is the wages of sin. Are we like the Israelites? Are we complainers? Do we not recognize our blessings? Look in the book of Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. How often are the Israelites praised for praising God for the blessings he gives them? And how often are they admonished for being stiff-necked, rebellious, wicked people who do not love God because of what he's done for them? They complain all the time. Let us go back to Egypt. It'd been better if we'd gone in slavery and stayed there than to die in the desert. But no, God has blessed them more times than they could count. So, if you can't think of 10 blessings off the top of your head, you got a little bit of work to do. Think on that. Pray on it this week. Think on your friends, your family. So, if you deserve death because of your sin and your wickedness, and all those other people out there who you think are blessed more than you actually aren't really blessed more than you, our question then becomes this: why does God allow people? Why? Why would he allow you, a sinful, wicked human being that does not love him, to continue to exist? Why has he not cast you into the fires of hell for which you have asked by saying, I don't want you, God. I don't need you, and I don't desire you? Why is it that he keeps you around? Well, it's because he loves you. It's because he desires a relationship with you that's not purely transactional. He doesn't want your relationship with him to be, all right, God, I have to do this, and then you will give me this. And if I do this, then you're going to give me punishment or other things. He desires a relationship with you that is actually loving. One where he doesn't force you to make these decisions. You have been given the will to either love God or not. Now, concerning his justness, is he just in this, giving you blessings when you deserve hell? Well, he actually addresses this in this death of his son. When he goes on the cross and dies in your place, he is loving enough to send his son for you, to pay the price that you can't, to allow you to come back into a relationship with God, even though at one point you said, I wanted nothing to do with you. Ultimately, at the end of the book of Job, after him and his friends have discussed this point of why does God allow bad people to suffer, his friends were always on the point of, Job, you must have sinned, and that's why God is not giving you blessings. He is harming you. And Job says, I had nothing that I know of that I have done to cause this. I have not sinned. If I have sinned, God, he's addressing God. If I have sinned, tell me, and I will get right with you. Because Job is steadfast in his love for God. Regardless of everything that he's lost, whether it is his possessions, his family, his health, he holds dearly to the fact that God is his God, and he needs nothing more than that. And through his trials, that is what he determined. God was who he needed. And it was by righteousness alone that he was able to stay faithful to God, that he was able to continue to love God through all of this. Job never learns why it is exactly that he is afflicted, though. Even though he comes to the realization that, really, truly, God, I didn't need anything but you. That was enough. He still never learned why it was that he suffered. Why was it that he dealt so horribly, or why he was dealt so horribly with? And a lot of believers, I think, have the same question. If I'm a believer and I'm loved by God and I love God, why is it that I still suffer? Why is it that I still am in trouble? As we continue here. So, all people doubtlessly deal with struggles, suffering, pain, toil, and they may not know why. Let's come up with a couple reasons why it is possible that you deal with this. The one thing, and I think probably the main thing, is we live in a sinful world full of sinful people who still hate God, and sin has consequences. We, even though many of us would say are believers, still suffer and still sin. So, when we suffer, I think first we should look at our lives, analyze ourselves. Are we at fault? Have we caused this upon ourselves? Have we sinned? Now, oftentimes, if not all the time, sin never only affects you. If you can think of a sin that can only truly ever affect you, I think you might need to think a little harder. I mean, look at this. Drunkenness. Yes, it affects you and your poor decisions, but your poor decisions affect others. When you drive drunk, you may injure somebody, harm someone. You may get a ticket, and that ticket affects your family, affects your pay. Can you now afford to do all the things that you desired to do? What about idolatry? If you commit adultery with your spouse, you've now split that union that you had. You've now affected that relationship. If you have kids, what if it leads to divorce? Your kids now are left without a loving family and household that is unified. What about the family that is around you? They now have to choose sides. Can they pick both? Can they still love both? You have lots of instances. Gossip that tear communities apart. Slander, lying, cheating, stealing. They don't only affect you. So sometimes suffering that we have may be because the fault of others. Other reasons why people may suffer is such as Job, to show him that he needed God, to show to him that without a shadow of a doubt that God was the one thing he could always count on, even though he lost everything else. Some people got to hit rock bottom before they realize, God is what I need. All these blessings in life can allow you to kind of hold on to one thing or another thing. They allow you to say, yes, I will hold on to my parents. My parents will always be there for me. But then their parents die and then they're lost. They have nothing to hold on to anymore. Or their children. I will hold on to my children. I lift them up as an idol. And they are now replacing the spot that God should have in my life. And then if they disappear, they have nothing. Money. I will rely on my money to save me. I will rely on my job for fulfillment. I will rely on a position of power or authority in my life. That will fulfill me. But then God takes that away, and it shows us that, yes, God is the one that truly is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And He is what we need in our lives. Other things that may help us deal with this loss and suffering is, what does it mean for those around us? Can our suffering be used as a witness and a testimony to those? How you deal with affliction affects others. If when you are afflicted with extra work at your jobs and you complain and you come to your friends and you say, Work is terrible, and I hate this extra stuff that I must do. Are you praising God that you have a job? Do they see that God is evident in your life? Or do they see that, God is not prevalent? If you suffer loss, do you rely on God for comfort? Or do you rely on other things? Alcohol, drugs, any other kind of distraction? Does that show them that God is important in your life? If you're afflicted with cancer and you go to the hospital and you have to do treatments, those other patients next to you and they see you, are you representing God and the hope and the joy that He has for you? Or are you mopey? Are you complaining? Are you sad? Do you praise God even in this turmoil and this hard times? Other points. The disciples of Jesus himself, all were persecuted and died for their faith. In your persecutions, in your suffering of others, when they come against you and they poke you and they taunt you and they're trying to test your faith, are you living up to it? Are you able to represent God to them as the disciples represented God to those who were killing them? It is said that the blood of the martyrs watered the seeds of the church. Are you able to live up to that? So, as we conclude today, as we wrap up, remember, when you struggle, when you suffer, when difficulty comes, are you keeping God as your all in all? Is He the one who's going to get you through it? Can you take everything in your life and toss it away and still be satisfied? When you suffer, are you the one at fault? If so, and you have sinned or you've backslid, repent and get right with God. Remember, when you suffer, you are a witness and a testimony to the goodness and the righteousness of God. Thank you. I'll pray for us.